It's 15:06 GMT. This is Victoria Wonghunda with Focus on Africa from the BBC World Service. Let's head to Sierra Leone, where the Electoral Commission has introduced a major shake-up in the way politicians are elected. They've announced that next year's parliamentary election will be held under a proportional representation system rather than one in which each constituency chooses its own member of parliament. Under proportional representation, lists of candidates are divided based on the percentage of votes for each political party. Sierra Leone's constitution allows for either system to be used, but opposition parties have reacted angrily to this, claiming that it will benefit the current ruling party. So what is the reason for it? I've been speaking to Chief Election Commissioner Mohamed Konneh.
Now that we have received the directive from the president as a commission, we have to engage with stakeholders, we have to engage with political parties, so that we can come up with a formula that will be fair and that will be inclusive.
So why were you directed by the president to change what has worked in the last few years?
The Constitution under 38 provides for us to do boundary delimitation as an electoral body on the basis of minimum 5 years or 7 years maximum. And the conditions for the boundary delimitation has to be aligned with population. So as a result of the midterm census that was conducted and the result released this year, and given that the boundary delimitation that was done for the 2018 election expired on February this year, as a commission, we decided to review the boundaries of constituencies. So in August this year, we make proclamation indicating our intention to do boundary delimitation. We had started the process. We had formed a committee. We had planned to do community engagement, stakeholders engagement, because these are all parts of the process of doing boundary delimitation. But then we had a problem August 10, which prevented us from having these meetings, and then it coincided with the voter registration. So having looked at the timeline for us to complete the boundary delimitation, to be ready to be included in the voter register, to meet the requirements of 6 months that we cannot change anything on the voter register before the election, we had advised that we cannot complete the boundary delimitation exercises, and we advised the president to consider the Section 38A, which provides that where we cannot have boundary delimitations, he can direct the Electoral Commission to conduct the election using the proportional representation, using the district block system.
So we're only looking down a few months till the elections next year in June 2023. Who does this change benefit, Mr. Konneh?
I think it will benefit the population. It will benefit everybody, not necessarily even the political parties. If we benefit the Sierra Leoneans, because one thing we have learned over the years, even during the constituency-based election, the by-elections have always been followed with lots of controversy, acrimonies, and all of that. So we think the proportional representation will benefit, it will encourage inclusivity and unity of the country at the end of the day.
But the opposition has actually, they've been reacting angrily to this, saying that it will only benefit the ruling party, yet you are saying that it will benefit all Sierra Leoneans.
What I'm saying, let's look at the 2018 election. Just consider the percentage of votes acquired by the various political parties using the constituency-based first past the post. If we had done the proportional representation in 2018, you will realize that all political parties will be represented in parliament across the country, every region. So therefore, using the proportional representation, at the end of the day, your vote you acquire as a political party will earn you a seat in parliament from wherever region, as long as you meet the requirement. The proportional threshold at the end of the day will give you a seat.
Sierra Leone's Chief Election Commissioner Mohamed Konneh. Now let's get some more context to this announcement from our reporter in Freetown, Umaru Fofana. Good evening, Umaru. Now many listeners may be confused to hear that Sierra Leone's constitution allows for 2 types of election system. Why is that the case?
Hi, Vic. Well, it all dates back to the war years in 1996, when the country was preparing to bring about democratic governance. The military junta then established an electoral commission, and the war was raging. Certain areas of the country, in fact, many parts of the country were inaccessible. So as a result, they brought about the PR system, whereby they used the whole of Sierra Leone as a single constituency, in which case the parties had to bring up the list of their candidates to go to parliament, and the percentage nationwide would go to the party by way of the number of seats they would get in parliament. That was largely because some of those areas were inaccessible. By then, the country's constitution was suspended. So when eventually the democratic election happened and the new government came into force, the subsequent years, Parliament allowed for that system as an alternative electoral system, which is why you have both the systems in the country's constitution.
Now, as you said, it started in 1996, and that's many years ago. And there'll be so many young Sierra Leoneans who would not have been alive at that time when it was introduced. But overall, how have people reacted to this announcement?
Well, exactly because the country's population is mostly young. A lot of the people here now were not aware of this PR system when it first happened in 96. And then in 2008, when they had the district block system for the first time here. So I, for example, personally, I've had so many questions being asked by people, members of the public, what is this about? What is this about? And that probably informs the reaction. The ruling party says that it is good for national cohesion. And they've been sounding very nostalgic about what happened here in 1996 and 2002. But then the opposition are saying, no, it is not. This, they say it's like a gimmick. And shortly after the announcement, I spoke to one of the representatives of the main opposition APC party for his reaction. His name is Sidi Yaya Tunis.
It is shocking, but not surprising. And we are of the view that the president was ill-advised. Preconditions necessary for the implementation of the district block system as stipulated in the 1991 Constitution. And as a political party, we will have to meet and we will explore all remedies available to us legally for us to challenge this and, where necessary, to stop this implementation of the PR system as announced by the Chief Electoral Commissioner.
Are you suggesting a breach of any provision of the country's laws?
Well, we are suggesting controversies in implementing the laws as stated in the Constitution of our country. And that is why we said we believe the president was ill-advised.
That was Sidi Yaya Tunis of the opposition APC party. Umaru, why has this process of the census and amending the constituencies been so problematic that it couldn't have happened before the election, as the Election Commission had said in that clip we had earlier?
Now, the ruling party, the Sierra Leone People's Party, when they were in the opposition, which was the last time the population and housing census was conducted, they alleged that the population census then was not really kosher. The figures they faulted, and then so when they came into power, they conducted a midterm census, which the statistics officer said was to correct some of the demographic problems they said they had been confronted with or they had noticed. And then the APC party, which is now the main opposition party, who were in power at the time, are now saying that the government wants to use this as a way of gerrymandering, creating more boundaries and more seats in parliament with the view for them winning. The same allegation which the SLP made against the APC when the APC were in power. So now we are not sure whether the Electoral Commission, and that question was asked of the Electoral Commissioner today, we are not sure which data is going to be used to determine the number of seats per district, whether it's going to be the midterm census figures or whether it's going to be the existing figures under the current boundaries that we have in constituency. So many things to talk about in the coming days and weeks.
Umaru Fofana in Freetown, thank you very much for that insight.
The NEC commissioner does not have that right. The president may consult with NEC. That is, at the time, if there are no constituencies established. And that is what I'm going to read to you now. Let me go to section 38A. Where under any law for the time being in force, a date for a general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established. So, from the date when they announce election them, and then constituencies are not established, I want you guys to pay attention. In accordance with subsection 3 of section 38, for the purposes of such election, the president may, after consultation with the Electoral Commission, direct that such election shall be conducted on the basis of existing districts in a manner to be known as district block system or district block representation system instead of constituencies. What did they tell we say? It said at the time when they announced election for, say, members of parliament, election for members of parliament, at the time when they announced that, guys, I'm speaking Creole, but I'm going to come to the international community to do this in English. But I think they can understand that fairly well. But for you guys, Sierra Leoneans, I want to make this in the simplest terms possible. At the time when they announced election, a date for election, if there are no constituencies existing at that time, the president can consult with NEC to say, hey, there are no constituencies. What do we do? That is the only time the proportional representation system can come into play. But what do we have? I'm going to take you guys now to section 38, subsection 4. That's where I'm going to take you guys right here. Let's start with this. The Electoral Commission shall review the division of Sierra Leone into constituencies at intervals of not less than 5 and not more than 7 years. The Constitution is very clear. You have section 38 and 38A, which was the amended part. 38A says you can only use the PR system in the absence of constituencies. Why do we have to go back and pull it? We don't have to pull it back. We didn't have to redo the Constitution just for that. Because the reason why we did the PR system was because we had a rebel war. So some of these areas were not accessible. But once we had peace, in 2004, we started using the constituency-based election. Every constituency draws for a member of parliament. And that is why we can hold our members of parliament accountable today. So these civil society guys, these guys are all the problems that we have. That is nonsense. There is no option there. It is either in the absence of constituencies. Constituencies have a lifespan of 5 to 7 years. So let's say 2024, December was the next election. And if the government failed to conduct a boundary delimitation by November or December of 2024, that is the only time they can use a proportional representation system, because the constituencies die immediately. These constituencies that we have, they die November of 2024. That is when they cease to exist. But at this particular point, they are there. The Constitution, the amended part of the Constitution, Section 38, only makes it very clear, again, that you can only... So let's go back to 38A. Let's expose these guys for who they are. It's very, very clear. Section 38A. It says, where under any law for the time being in force, a date for general election of members of parliament has been appointed, but constituencies have not been established. That is what this says. The amended part only makes provision because we did not have peace at the time in 1996. That was why this part was amended, was added to the Constitution. Salon people, they only add this part to the Constitution because in 1996, we began the rebel war. So when we had the election, we say, okay, well, how can we have at least the voices of these people, in as much as it is not really them picking their own, electing their own officials, but at least we want to have a say. So let us do a PR system where it's like they take a whole big area, and say, okay, depending on the amount of votes that we get from that area, we can then say, these are the people that should represent us. We only used and amended the Constitution in 1996 to add this section 38A to make provision for the fact that we cannot access these areas. That was why we had the proportional representation then. We went back to the default. What is the default? The default is constituency-based elections. Guys, these things are not rocket science. It's simple. It's a lying. We made an amendment of the Constitution to suit the times that we were in. So the Constitution was amended in section 38A because there was 38, and then 38A came because we had a rebel war. So we had to have elections. Remember when Mada Bio, the same President Bio, they did not want to hand over power. That's why he sent soldiers all across the country to shoot around. But the women stood their ground and said, we want elections before peace. Mada Bio did not want election. He said, let us have peace first and then elections. But he lied to you. He tells you I wore certain kind of green. The kind of green that I wore, I'm the only person who knows what I did. I will not say it now. I would never say it. what I did to bring SLPP in power in 1996. The same SLPP that is president of today. It was amended because in 1996, when we had the first elections after the Rebel War, when we should have had elections in 1992 anyways, because President Joseph Saidu Momo was taking us there. Before he was overthrown by Marabio, the same President Bio, who overthrew him in 1992. We were on the verge of having elections. But in 1996, when we had that election, the only reason why the Constitution was amended, added in Section 38A was added, was because of the war. Certain areas were inaccessible. We cannot go there. So they set up the PR system. These guys think we're stupid. You know, this is why I say People's Liberation Academy. We have to teach. Sierra Leoneans have to learn these things.